on mute because Gowree is the star for today. Over to you, Gowree.
Thank you both for that generous introduction. I hope I live up to that during the next 1 hour that we will spend with you. So unfortunately, we are where we are with this law. Right, wrong, good, bad, we can keep debating about it, but it's important for all of us to understand what it entails. Of course, there are court challenges pending, as you may be aware, before the Supreme Court of India. We'll wait and see what happens to those court challenges, right? But in the meantime, because as you can imagine, the court challenges do not sort of conclude overnight. It will take some time, even if we believe that, skill gaming, and that was one of the questions, can it be really banned, right? So we will wait for the answers. As you know, there were challenges before the Supreme Court, even from the Karnataka and Tamil Nadu law. Those have been heard, right? Now, whether the judges will give verdict on that first and this law later, we'll need to wait and watch for all of that. In the meantime, unfortunately, sort of, as we all know, there has been a ban imposed on online money gaming, irrespective, skill, chance, and all of that, right? As you may be aware, the law has yet not come into effect. That means, though the law has got presidential assent, technically, it still needs a separate notification. Those who want to go and read the fine print under section 1(3), you still need a notification, right? But pending that, I believe most of you would have discontinued just by way of caution, because overnight, if the law comes into effect, how are you going to, pay the player balances and things like that, and we'll discuss, as we go along on all of that as well, right? So what I've done is I've created like a small slide deck so that, before we start the question answers, just to do the tone setting, so we know where we are, right? And then we can decide, on how to progress from here. Because one thing is to just know that, okay, there is a ban, but also that gives us an opportunity to innovate, correct? So where is that innovation possible? Under which bucket is that innovation possible? Let's debate all of that, and happy to take questions. Being a lawyer, just one disclaimer, please don't seek opinions from me on this webinar. I will give you my initial reaction to some of the points, but the devil lies in the detail. So please don't rely upon, oh, Gowree said so on the webinar, please, because there are several nuances. As we go along, you will understand. Okay. So with that, I'm just going to see if you can see the slides. Okay. Now the presentation mode. Let me see. But can you see or can you see the slide, Gaurav?
Yeah, Gowree,
Okay.
no, not yet. Yeah, now I can.
Not yet.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
We
So
can
good.
now, Gowree. Yeah, we can now.
So let's go to the next. So basically, but unfortunately, it's not moving. Okay. So, while I sort of figure out the logistics, let's continue
Can I
with
just
the.
figure out? Can I just suggest something, Gowree?
Yes.
Hey, Gowree, Anurag here. Can I just suggest something?
Sure.
If you don't mind, can you just send us the link or the presentation? Just send it to Gaurav or Ayushi, and then they can present it on screen while you do the talking. Because it seems like
Okay.
there's also a Wi-Fi issue on your end, and we're lagging a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Understood. Why don't I just mail presentation, right? And in the meantime, I'll keep talking. So this particular law essentially, has identified. First of all, it applies to only the online space, right? It doesn't apply to the. Just a minute. Sorry for this. Okay. It doesn't apply to the digital. Doesn't apply to the physical space, right? So that is point number one. Can I just take a second and just send it so that I'm not distracted?
Yeah, Gowree, you can send it to us. We'll project it, and then
Maybe
you
I
can
should have
speak
done
over
that
it.
before. Now I'm able to. I'm just going to mail it to you. I think that is better.
Sure.
Okay, so let me continue. Okay. So first of all, it applies. I'm not able to now come back to the main screen. Okay. So this law basically identifies three types of online games, right? Number one is the online money game. The second type is esports, and it's online social games. So there is a broad bucket of online game, which is widely defined, as you can imagine, anything and everything on digital internet, etc. Right? And then you have these three categories. The question arises, is there a fourth category? Possibly, right? Which doesn't fall in any of these definitions, right? But the whole purpose of this act seems to be, if you really see, is to prohibit online money gaming. But insofar as esports and social games are concerned, they not only talk about regulation, but they also talk about promotion. And there are extensive sort of provisions to say that, okay, we will promote it. They may even collaborate with the state government. So the center may collaborate with the state government when it comes to esports. So there is a conversation, even some schemes. For example, social games, they talk about, educational, can be used for educational purposes and all of that. So if you see even the statements of objects and reasons, there also they talk about, sort of promotion and specific sort of, activities towards promotion. Thus far, you have, for a fact that there was an AVGC policy, there was a conversation within that framework. Can we go to the first? I think there is some confusion. Can you go to the third slide? Yeah. So if you see, I think on Google it is coming little warped, but anyway. Now let us understand, as you are aware, if you see the speech in the parliament or even in the, the statement of objects and reasons, it's a discussion vis-a-vis offshore gaming platforms. So the question is, yes. Now, thus far, what was the situation? The state-by-state law which prohibited gambling activity, right? Those laws did not have an extraterritorial application as per our constitution, right? So if you see a lot of conversations here before, we're always focused on the fact that how do we stop the offshore platforms? So in Marathi, we have a saying that along with the dry thing, even the wet thing, gets whatever, burned, right? Or the other way around. So basically, unfortunately, to curb this, offshore platforms and a lot of menace that was being discussed vis-a-vis the offshore platforms, unfortunately, the good apples are also getting, sort of covered in this element, right? But coming back, yes, the offshore platforms are also covered, and we will need to wait and watch the mechanism. More likely than not, blocking, of course, will be exercised, which right was anyway being exercised, under the Information Technology Act. So the question is, why then do we need the law? So that question was even asked to the Secretary Meity, and at least I did not see if there was a clear answer to that, right? Now, this law also has an overriding effect. What does it mean? So this law says it is in addition to the other laws, but if there is a contradiction, we'll have an overriding effect. I'll give you an example. Suppose a state law allows a certain online activity, including game of skill, right? But this law is prohibiting it, then it basically will have an overriding effect that now this law will prohibit it. So just to give an example, if Tanoga under Tamil Nadu law had, say, regulated the skill gaming, right? The question arises, then you may have a question that can I offer even in Tamil Nadu in that case, because it is regulated there and permissible there. The answer to that is unfortunately no, because this law will have an overriding effect. That's the way to look at this provision, right? Then the next point is, how do we end up getting regulated? Suppose I want to enter, now that I cannot do real money or money gaming, right? Can I create models for social games? Now, those are the questions that are coming our way, right? So the question is, can I, because now there is a promotion, whatever promotion and all very well understood, but there is a contemplation of regulation. Does it mean today I can offer a social game? Right, the answer to that is today you can offer social games or esports. I will come to back in a bit, but other games which are not online money games, you can continue to offer till such time the regulator comes up with a framework, right? Once the regulator comes with a framework, and it's a may provision, it may or may not, right? But if it comes up with a provision for online games, other games, that is social games, right, then you will need to comply with that. Insofar as esports is concerned, it's the other way around. You actually need registration or recognition under the other law that we will come to. But that's a small distinction that we need to bring in, right? So basically, that the function of the authority. Now they have not given a which authority. They may form a completely new authority, or may use an existing authority and agency and grant them the power under the act to act, sort of for the functioning of the under the act, right? So the questions will be who's going to regulate me and all of that. We don't know the answer. I'm just telling you what we don't know as well, right? So we will need to wait and watch for that. Then what does the authority do? Not only, sort of recognizes, categorizes, regularizes online game. See the last bullet. It will address complaint, but complaint regarding what? If the online game has a prejudicial interest to the users. Okay. So your regular consumer grievances is not something likely to go like a contractual, mera paisa nahi mila, or I did not get the gift which I was promised, or whatever it may be. Those type of issues, will be left to your probably dispute resolution mechanism. We'll need to wait and watch. Like you have seen under the e-commerce rules, under the Consumer Protection Act, for example, you should have, because all of you anyway, fall under that. So there is a grievance redressal mechanism, right? Even if you see the intermediary rules, they also have a grievance redressal mechanism expectation from a platform. So there is a possibility that you yourself need to evolve a grievance redressal mechanism, and we'll need to wait and watch for that. But this particular authority will look into the prejudicial interest element insofar as the game is concerned, right? So that is currently at least the limited element. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah. Now the question arises, what are the offenses and penalties, right? I'm just giving you the overall construct, and then I'm going to deep dive quickly. So the offenses or penalties are not only for the operators, but also the advertisers and the banks, right? So it's a wide provision, right? And therefore you will see that the banks, the question is, one of the questions was, and we'll come to that, how will the banks react, right? I mean, when we come to those questions, we'll deal with that, right? Then as I mentioned, the authority may come up with some guidelines, orders, and all that. If you don't comply with, then also there may be a fine up to 10 lakhs or a cancellation and prohibition, things like that, right? So that is the second element. And of course, as I said before, blocking of the access. So if you ask me, vis-a-vis all of you within India, right, all of this will work. Insofar as offshore guys are concerned, unfortunately, by the time you really enforce the criminal sanctions, penalties, and all on the offshore guys, I don't know how it's going to work. But blocking is will be probably the first action, vis-a-vis the offshore if they don't comply, right? Interestingly, there is no penalty for the players. And I heard, Minister Vaishnav talk about this to say that in their mind, players are the victims, right? So they said, we don't want to criminalize the players. Okay. So that is why you don't see any liability vis-a-vis the players, right? And I think I have already mentioned the last bullet, so we can go to the next now, the meaty part of it, as to what do you mean by online. So these are the penalties, as I mentioned, right? And the important thing is, sorry, but what happen is, even getting into different which are not online money games, right? Other forms of games, your service providers will always be, okay? as why?
Gowree, I
Because
think your internet. Gowree, I think your internet is slightly laggy. So
so
I
let
think for the
me
time being,
switch off the camera. Yeah, I'll
that
just
will be better. I think it's
switch
of the camera. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So what will happen is even if you are not in the in online money element and you're offering other games, okay, there may be some money involved. For example, subscriptions, we have come to that, that and all that. The point just trying to be, we have to take cognizance. All your service providers are going to be extra cautious, whether advertising platforms, whether you anyone, or even for that matter, because if you see language which is wider, right, where all of them also can get penalized, correct? So we will, and maybe this is one question you can ask me. We will discuss how to navigate that. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. I'll just rush through now because I know there are questions. If you can go to the next slide, we can skip this. Now, if you see the very crucial to understand as to what do you mean by online game. See, even though we have to decide whether or not, and it's on an application. Can you hear me or?
Yeah, Gowree, I think we are losing you a lot. The internet seems to be stuttering quite a bit. Yeah.
Sorry, but unfortunately, okay. Can I just try? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it seems to be a bit better, but there's stuttering happening.
What to do? Just can I just try directly from mobile rather than, I'm sorry, but today seems to be a bad day. Let me just try connecting directly.
No worries.
Yeah. Bad day today, looks like. Is this better now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So till what point was I audible? So accordingly, I'll continue.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of stuttering, so maybe you can, start from the beginning on this slide, especially.
Okay. So if you see, insofar as the online money game, okay, is extremely important to understand what is the online money game. Because if you see, there is a complete prohibition vis-a-vis this. Okay. So I think if I want to simplify this for everybody, you just think in my new format. Is there a money in and money out? Okay. That is the first question to ask. If that is the case, that's a red flag immediately. Okay. Now, if you see, and it has to be an and, not an or. Okay. So it has to be both money in and money out. When we contrast this with the esport definition, I'll show you the difference. Okay. When we get there. But this is one important element to remember. We will discuss the models as we go along. Okay. Now we can go to the next slide. Now, the question is, how are they defining other stake in the prior definition? When I say money in, money included other stake, or they said other stake. Other stake is not only the money. So for example, you can buy the coins and then say I'm playing with the coins. Okay, I'm not playing with money. That cannot be because it is equivalent to money. Correct? So that also is treated as money in, right? So that is anything equivalent to money will be treated as if it's money in. Okay. But that money in, as you can see, how do we recognize that? Which is purchased by paying money directly or indirectly. Or even indirect payment is considered as money in. Okay. We can go to the next slide quickly. Now, when it comes to esports, okay, Now, esports is not something you and I can simply say this is esport. No, this won't work. Because it has to be, if you see the third point, it has to be recognized under National Sports Governance Act. So simultaneously, just before this law was enacted, another law was enacted by the Parliament called National Sports Governance Act, where there is another authority which will recognize or designate certain games as sports. Only if your game is designated under that law will you get covered under this law. That is thumb rule. Okay. So I can't say this is my e-sport and then that is how it will apply. Okay. But as I said before, that there is no prohibition today for you to offer it. I want to reiterate that. Only when the government puts in a regulation vis-a-vis that, if you don't comply with that regulation, will there be a prohibition. I hope that is clear. Okay. But at the same time, you can see there is interesting element here, bullet number 5. It says may involve registration or participation fee, okay, for entry or admin cost and performance-based prize money. So money in and money out both is recognized in esport. Okay. Now, but they say that cannot be in the nature of betting or stake wagering. Understand? So this is their distinction. So they are saying that just entry free, like you have, suppose I am participating, say a carom contest, right? I pay an entry fee and I win the prize. That prize is based on my, say, rank or whatever it may be, right? They will allow that. But this all will be regulated. So there will not be doubt whether I can do it or not, because you first need to register, with the authority. So when you're registering with the authority, they will see what is your participation fee, what prizes are you giving, how are you managing that. All of that will be examined by the authority. Only then you will get the registration. Correct? So that is the way esport is going to work. If you can go to the next slide. Now I'll wrap it in a second. Now, can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So, I have not again dealt with the previous slide, and when you ask questions, I can, and I just want to explain now the social game. Now, if you see, the first thing that they say that it cannot involve money or other stake or participation with the expectation of winning by monetary game. So, but if you see that along with point number 2, may charge subscription fee or one-time access fee. Correct? So you have to read it together. So you can have a subscription or a one-time fee, right? But it cannot be in the nature of wager, right? And I'm sure you have questions around this, right? The next expectation is it should be solely for entertainment, recreation, and skill development purpose. So the purpose also has been given. Okay. So when the authority comes out with the guidance on social game, because it is a part of the definition, they will have to keep all this in mind. And if you see in the end, it says, and not online money game or esports. So this is a catch-all, left out, games, right, which will fall into this category. So as I said, to begin with, 3 categories: online money game, esport, and social game. So if you see, it says if you should not be an online money game or esport, you may fall in this catch-all category, which is online social game, but you cannot be wagering, right? So these are the 3 categories, and even for this, what has happened is, as I said before, for this also there will be some regulation expected, including, and if you see the fine print of the section, including for safe and age appropriate content. Like internationally, you know that there are age ratings even for your video games, correct? So video games, all the online games, right, could fall into this category. As I said, like tomorrow multiplayer video games, will it get covered? Possibly, yes. So there may be a regulation of age appropriateness, KYC, all of that, because it says safe and age appropriate content, right? So you may expect some regulation around that as well. Okay. Now, as I said before, there may be some schemes for promotion, this, that, and the other. We'll need to wait and watch for that. right? So I hand it back to Anurag and Gaurav for now taking the questions.
Thank you, Gauri, for that important overview. I think a lot of people had questions around the act, some fundamentals. So I think thank you for clarifying that. We can now move into our Q&A segment. As many of the people attending here would know, along with the registration link, we had a section there for sending in your queries, any questions that you might have. So these questions we've curated now, and many questions overlap. Some of them we've clubbed together. So Gauri will I'll just start with some of the questions that we received. Yeah,
Sure.
one of the questions that was most often asked from people, and let's just get that out of the way first, is most people wanted to know the government's intent with the
Yeah.
prohibition when other countries have opted for regulation, and where does India essentially stand globally on this?
No, that's a very, very valid question. So there are jurisdictions, which, sort of experimented, let me put it this way, with the ban or otherwise, right? But most developed countries, at least, have landed up with some regulation, right? Some countries like US had continued to have that issue of state by state, the way we had, thus far, right? State by state regulation and all of that. But in Europe, you will see most of the European countries have opted for a regulation, and because the fundamental base being that, and there also they don't get into skill versus chance. So when we used to go to international conferences, everybody was, why do you even want to get into skill versus chance, right? Because even skill gaming, you need player protection and everything, right? So regulation is the way forward, has been the most, sort of developed country approach. So India, in that sense, has definitely taken a different approach. We need to see whether it really helps, because mostly the view that is always taken is prohibition should be the last resort, right? Even constitutional, and we'll deal with those questions. Prohibition should be last resort, and prohibition sometimes lead to underground activities. That is the other, and internet being how it works, right? It's whether prohibition will be even effective is the question being asked, right? So if you have to balance out consumer interest, because consumer is at the center, correct? So if consumer is at the center, then if consumer is forced to getting into, when I say forced, I mean nobody is forcing us to play, but if they do not have the legal avenues to play within the country, there is a possibility of they going to illegal avenues, which was already happening. Whether it will increase, and what I understand is some of the offshore platforms, they in fact started their marketing activities or giving promotions and things more, once this ban was imposed in India, which in fact shows that there is a possibility, right? So coming back to your original question, in my mind, India has taken a approach, if you ask me, visa, I mean, the aims that they were expecting, there could have been more proportionate towards at least the perceived problems that they have. And this industry has already shown by self-regulation and all of that, that such a approach is possible. Right, even Tanoga's regulations, initial there was resistance, but later on most of you have complied, right? So there has been a positive approach towards sort of regulation thus far. This U-turn is something which in my mind was unexpected, but yeah, so that's I mean, again, probably, and why has India done it, right? So I think, and I could be completely wrong, this is my guess with my conversations, this entire debate of skill versus chance and how to determine skill and what is chance, that is where I think there could have been a fallout in my mind. Okay, and in the market, and some of you may be aware, there are games that were projected being skill games when they were in fact not, right? So this probably led to the government to sort of say that forget it, right? We are not getting into this debate, skill versus chance, because you never know how it will be pushed. Because day-to-day basis, how do you even determine which is, so many games are entering the market, how do you even determine who's doing right, who's doing wrong? That could have led this to complete ban. I hope some sense prevails either through court direction or otherwise, and we'll see some changes. But I think that is where it is or originating. I mean, in my view, yeah.
Thank you, Gauri. I think a lot of people had a question about the whole skill gaming and the
Yeah.
constitutionality of it. What are the precedents that were set? How will that play out? I think you answered that as well.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's another fundamental question. I think it's fairly clear to most people, but it just would be good to reiterate. Some people wanted to understand if the law has already come into effect and what immediate steps need to be taken from the
Yeah.
operators, especially.
Sure.
And is there any transition period or safe harbor for operators to wind down existing products without
No,
penalties?
that's a very fair question. I think in the introductory comments, I did mention that the law has received presidential act, but not come into effect yet. Right? But most of you have stopped the operation, and probably what I understand, from the interviews and conversation I've had, that the government is not bringing that into effect immediately because they want you to return the player funds and things like that, right? So the banks should support that activity, and maybe that's why they have not brought into effect immediately. Plus, they need to set up the authority, etc. See, that safe, I would say, is right now the kind of operation, because the moment the into effect, that is not, the law is not providing thereafter a safe harbor. This period till the law comes into effect is your safe harbor, unless they specifically give you a about, right, once when they bring into the act into effect, right? And the other question is on, I'm sure all of you have written to your players to withdraw funds, right? They would have withdrawn funds. Some people are, I'm sure, even putting a telephone call to players to, sort of help them withdraw funds and whatever. I don't understand, whether what if they don't, what happens, right? So I understand.
Gauri, maybe could you turn off the video again? I think it was better. Now we're starting to lose you again.
Oh, so, do I need to repeat the entire thing or?
No, just the last 20 seconds or so.
Yeah. So the next question is, if the players don't withdraw the player funds, then what happens, right? So please go back to your terms and conditions. Whatever you have, sort of put in your terms and conditions, go with that approach. Okay. Ideally, try to return, contact the players, all of that, right? But that is what will be expected. But you can rely upon your terms and conditions if the players don't withdraw the funds.
Thanks, Gauri. Another question was I believe, a lot of gaming operators are figuring out their pivot strategy, what to move on to. So the
Yeah.
question that came was around the models of gaming that can legally survive under the new framework. Esports, social, subscription, offline skill games. I think you briefly touched upon this and the
Yeah.
limited each, but if you would like to elaborate a little bit more.
No, absolutely. See, esports, as I said before, we can't really figure out today. What you can probably do is, if you believe, just to give an example, I heard, this MP in the Madhya Pradesh High Court, a petition was filed by Carom, some league or something like that, which have launched the online Carom version, etc. Right? Now, those of you who are into this sport and you believe that you should be recognized as e-sport, for example, you may have to work with the authorities under the other act which I mentioned, under that act, to get designated as a sport under that law. Only then you will get a recognition as sport. So National Sports Governance Act is your first kind of protocol to go and get your recognition, right? If you can't get that, then whether you can still fall under the online social game. Now, when it comes to online, can you hear me? I just want to double check that I'll continue to speak then.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Gauri.
So
It's fine.
then the next point is, what is the model? Correct? Whichever model you choose, please see the red flag, as I've said, money in, money out, which is linked to the money in, is a problem. If there is no money in, I have seen some models which have evolved in the market, no money in, only prizes. No problem. Correct? Because there is no money in. Ad supported platforms, no problem. because the player is not putting the money. Your platform is earning through the ads separately. Correct? One-time subscription fee ke aake khelo, no problem, right? But if there is a subscription fee and prizes, could be a problem, correct? Because I'm putting in money with the expectation of a win, to put it simply, correct? So money in and money out will be a problem, correct? So the social, like there are, some models where you say, I'm say just to give an example in the ad supported model also, right? Ad supported model, and I want ad free experience, just like you have YouTube ad free experience or AWOD, right? You pay and then you become XWOD because you are removing the ads, right? So some of these fees which are not linked to the gameplay, which are not linked to the money going in the game, right? Let us put that as a thumb rule. Like, for example, if I buy diamonds, okay, and I win diamonds, okay, and then I play with those diamonds, there is a problem, correct? Because the diamonds have the monetary value because I can buy them, and something which I'm winning is equivalent to that money. Just to give an example, if I'm buying 10 rupee, worth a diamond, okay, say 2 diamonds, I play, I win 5 diamonds. So I can continue to play that game with the 5 diamonds. That means what? That it is equivalent to money. Otherwise, I would have had to buy those 5 diamonds to play. Correct? So that is the way to think about as to whether something I'm giving to the player, which the player is going to further use, okay, can that be also bought by money? Then it becomes equivalent to money. I know it may sound a little complex, but that's why I try to give that example, right? So that is the way to think about, right? And I would recommend that you go to a lawyer, seek a legal opinion, because, there is a criminal liability after all, right? So therefore, but I'm just giving you some thumb rules in the models. These are the models we have seen in the market emerge, right? Yeah. Gowree, back to you.
Thanks, Gowree. So an extension to this question, actually, some developers are also wondering about in-app purchases. So loot boxes,
Right.
account sales, etc. So do these also fall under stakes then?
That's a very interesting question. See, let me put it this way, right? Put it very simply. When I buy something in the game, which is more of a ornamental character, like avatar, skins, right? Which is not really taking me anywhere further in the game. Correct? It's merely ornamental. Correct? Then that kind of money in should not be a problem. But I'll give you another example. If you say that those who have bought these avatars, okay, they will be entitled to prizes. So I'm buying the avatar with an expectation of winning prizes. That will be a problem. Correct? So again, you have to link it back to see what is it leading to, not just whether I can buy. What will it lead to? That is the next question to be asked.
Okay. Just also, there's a question that came from a lot of people, Gowree, regarding the extent of the enforcement powers of the law, the authorities, and how will people who are operating from offshore, how will they be handled under this?
Right. So I think, as I mentioned before, this law does have extraterritorial application. Okay. So let us first understand what all, if there is a violation, what all penalties I mentioned already: imprisonment, fine, all of that. Correct? Blocking. Correct? So technically, the Indian authorities can prosecute the foreign operator. Now, if you see other cyber crimes that happen, forget this for the time being. Other cyber crimes also, there are so many sort of that happen, like hacking and this, that, and the other internationally from offshore. Okay, even financial frauds, all of that we have seen over a period of time. Unfortunately, when you say enforcement, I will put it into two buckets. One is actually nabbing the offender and putting that person in the prison. Correct? Or imposing a fine and recovering that fine. Correct? Now, that is something going to be very difficult because you have multilateral, treaties involved to sort of, you have seen, right? You read in the papers, there are offenders who are sitting in UK. You have that extradition treaty, this, that, and the other, right? So that is where the enforcement, if you ask me from a actual enforcement in terms of criminal law enforcement, I don't know whether, this law will sort of help and whether the authorities will go to that extent of even doing that. What they will continue to do is blocking. Correct? Banks will be, banks, I understand they already had a meeting with banks and fintechs to ensure that the, remittances don't happen. So it is more on these lines that the enforcement is likely, which was already happening if you ask me, right? So I don't see beyond that they will actually, go to the extent, because you also have seen in other cyber crimes, have you really heard that the foreign offenders have been, brought to the table and, really charged and fined and this, that, and the other? You have not seen that. So unlikely in this case as well. I mean, more from a practical perspective. There may be FIRs filed, there may be prosecution, initiated and all of that. But practical level, unless somebody travels to India, their arrest and all that is going to be very difficult. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question was, before I want to give the audience a chance to ask questions. Some of the questions have already appeared in the chat. So Gowree, we would also want to address those. But before we move on to that, another question that we had pre-sourced was essentially about the banks and payment gateways. How will they treat non-RMG gaming companies? Will there be spillover effects where even compliant businesses face disruptions in transactions?
No, it's a very important question. In fact, even today, even before this law, there have been situations where some of the banks, their compliance teams did not want gaming companies as clients in the first place. Right? So now because now under Section 7, they have a direct liability. Correct? They will be more cautious. Now, if they are supporting your payments in, say, subscription fee, suppose you want to collect subscription fee, how do they know that you are not operating an online money game? Right? So they will be definitely cautious. They will seek legal opinions and all of that. But unfortunately, whether even with legal opinions they will be satisfied, we need to wait and watch. Because as I said, they have a direct liability. What is likely to happen if the authority gets set up? Right? As I said before, authority can on an application confirm whether a particular game is an online money game or not. Okay? So maybe one can make an application. You may not be, they may not still establish, say, let's take a situation where, say, October law comes into effect, authority is established. They are yet to, come out with the law for esports and social game and whatnot. They are yet to come through, but you have a model, okay, of social game, which you believe is kosher, right? And your payment gateway is still not onboarding you. What can you do? You can write to the authority, seek a view, explaining your model, seek a view that whether you're online money or not. And the authority is supposed to give that view. With that view, now you can go to the bank. How soon will that happen? Whether authority will revert overnight, we don't know. These are the intervention areas in my mind, because as you know, just to sort of slightly digress, the government has said that we may come out with FAQ, we can come out with some guidance. So these are the things you should seek from the government, right? Because let us understand, they want to promote social game, they want to promote esports, then they might as well give that clarity, without which the promotion is not possible, right? So these are the areas where all of you should, as EGF or otherwise, should intervene and seek, clarity, and say that if you are making that application, please try to revert to us in a week's time or whatever the timelines, right? So that you can get support, because coming back to your original question, I were a bank lawyer, I would want them to be cautious. I want them to check, that your model is indeed kosher or not, right? Because now I have direct liability.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Gauri. I think I want to leave some time to address some of the questions in the chat as well. Some very interesting questions have popped up. There's a
Okay.
question from Rabilal Thapa regarding Web3 tokens. So what he wants to understand is, can Web3 token economies be integrated into recognized esports tournaments under this framework? And if yes, then how? So people have questions regarding the regulations of Web3 businesses as well. How
Yeah.
will this?
See, I'll tell you
Yeah.
the difficulty here that we are talking about, right? If they fall in the category of virtual tokens, right? That's another, how would I say, track that the government is looking into, because they have yet not recognized, okay, that as legally viable tokens or otherwise, right? There is still a conversation ongoing how to recognize crypto, this, that, and the other. So if you fall into that category, right, whether, so they have taxed it, the VDAs have been taxed, right? But the tokens that we are talking about, if they fall in the crypto category, right? So there are tokens which may fall, which may not fall, right? But if they have a monetary value, correct, which can be recognized, technically it can be integrated in esports if you ask me. But the problem is that the government then has to make up its mind first that they are okay with that. It is one thing to tax, and it is other thing to say something is okay, right? So if you feel that that is something, so when you're doing these consultations with the government, this is additional point to put across that, because if you see the definition of a stake, right, they have included everything, digital, blah, blah, everything, right? So if you see the definition of e-sport for that matter, right, it says that there could be some money in, as I said, subscription fee, correct? So if that can be in the nature of these tokens, right, then technically you can do that. Okay. But as I said, for that, the government first needs to reconcile whether they are recognizing that in the first place as a valid currency or whatever, commodity.
Absolutely. So I just want to reiterate before we go forward, I think we have some time to take a couple of questions more.
Sure.
That whatever Gauri is mentioning here, this is for everyone, not to be construed as legal advice. Certainly, when you're taking decisions regarding the future of your business, planning something, please consult your legal and financial counsels. So Gauri, there is another question here, which is quite interesting from Raghu Gagneja. Essentially, he says that the Act envisions three categories of games. However, there can be potentially formats which fall outside these buckets. So under social, for example, under online social games, since subscription-based models are allowed, so long as they are not in the nature of wagers, will it be permissible for formats to offer white goods and other prices? And there's a extension to this question. So he's saying that let's imagine a platform that offers daily subscriptions. Can that be viewed in the nature of stake or wager? So there are two parts. Essentially, white goods and other prices. Is that allowed? And can subscriptions be viewed in nature of stake or wager? Daily subscriptions.
Sure. So see, so long as the prizes are offered in a game or white goods are offered in a game where there is no money in, that is not a problem. Okay. Wherever there is money in, and then, okay, when I say money in, I mean for the game. Okay, for example, okay, let me just play it out a little bit more. You have ad supported platform. Okay. And in that ad supported platform, you can also pay for ad free experience. And then you say that only people who have paid for ad free experience are entitled to prizes. So aren't you linking that in money in with money out? Correct? So that is where we have to be cautious. But otherwise, I mean, keeping that caveat aside, technically offering of prizes apparently doesn't seem to be prohibited so long as there is no money in as such. Okay. So that is an FAQ thing we should clarify with the government. I understand it was already discussed in the meeting with MeitY, as such as well, right? So that is one. Now the second point you mentioned, sorry, I lost track of that. Second
Yeah,
part was,
second point was about the daily subscriptions. Will that be
yeah, so
construed as
daily, so if you see daily subscription as such, I don't see, again, see any money in it so long as not linked to money out. I don't see that as a problem. Okay. So I thought I'll just clarify that for the timing, but at the same time, they are going to look at the models, the government, then they will allow, not allow. So there is a possibility that they may not allow also certain models. That's why currently I'm going by the definition. But that does not mean the government tomorrow will allow those models. They will say, I know I don't like this model for whatever reason. Because ultimately, if you see, there is a provision, section 8(3), those who want to read the law, that you have to comply with such directions, order, etc., issued by the authority. So if the authority says that this type of subscription is not allowed, then it will not be allowed. I want to clarify that. So today I'm giving my gut feel basis the definitions, but I'm not a regulator. Correct? Regulator may have a different view.
Understood. Okay, so there's another question that is interesting from Archita Gowree on, essentially she's trying to understand the second and third order effects of this. So the question is, since this is prohibited, the advertising and promotion, not just in terms of promoting online money games, but in terms of promoting online money gaming. In your view, will this impact even mentions depictions of online money gaming in, for example, popular culture such as social media platform, OTT content, etc.? How do you anticipate this, the
I
interplay
think
of this with
that's a fair
media?
question. That's a fair
Yeah.
question, and this is something I want to also link back to COTPA, which is the tobacco related advertising, right? So how the government has played it out, and I don't agree with that, and unfortunately the Supreme Court has stayed one of the judgments which which said that if it is simply, it has to be what do you mean by advertisement, that you're advertising a brand. Correct? So the argument taken was that if you are simply showing somebody smoking, okay, technically it is not an advertisement.
Yeah.
Correct? You're not advertising a brand. Right? So coming back to your question, suppose there is a series, web series, and somebody says, oh, I've been, playing whatever game. Okay? And I've lost, unfortunately, or somebody is shown to lose something, right? Money lost, right? In my view, simply as a part of your story, saying all this is not a problem because there is nothing, no brand being advertised. Correct? But in the COTPA situation, they said, they came out with the regulation in fact. They said that even if you're depicting something for the cigarette, the smoking, it has to be in line with the storyline, required by the storyline and all that nonsense, right? So those rules are under challenge as we speak before the Supreme Court, right? So what I'm saying is, you never know, regulator will, extend to what level when it comes to advertising, but pure and simple mention without a brand, in my view, is technically not an advertising.
Got it. Understood. All right. So I think we can take one more question very quickly before we come to the end of this. I believe there is another question that we had received. This was regarding how some states like Karnataka are drafting their own frameworks. How should operators then manage the risk of conflicting central versus state rules in this scenario?
So I think I briefly in my introductory conversation did mention this, that if a state is allowing something, okay, but the center has banned it, at least under this law, the center has said that my law will prevail over everything else if there is a contradiction, right? Now, whether the Supreme Court holds central law to be valid or not, we'll need to wait and watch for that. But today, that is the way it is, right? Unfortunately.
The another question that arises, will I be punished twice? So some states have banned anyway skill gaming. Correct? Online
Right.
skill gaming. Right? AP, Telangana and others as well. Of course, others have been stayed or overturned. But AP, Telangana today is still valid. Will I be punished twice? Right? So that question, of course, now most of you have stopped it, so that question may not be valid. But these are the questions between center and state will keep popping up. But to answer, even if the state law allows something, unfortunately, this law has an overriding effect.
Understood. All right, I think we've covered most of the questions that people had sent in. Some questions we addressed from the chat as well. Unfortunately, we are running short on time, and I know people have a lot of questions. But I'd like to mention that if you'd like to continue this dialogue, you can find both Gowree and the e-gaming federation on LinkedIn. You can reach out to us, and we can facilitate this further. Thank you, Gowree. I just want to take a moment to thank you, appreciate you for taking out the time today for sharing your expertise with us, and Rag for setting the context today. And of course, I want to thank you all for joining and engaging in this important conversation. Before we actually conclude the session for today, I would just request whoever is comfortable, if you can turn on your cameras, we can probably take a quick picture for social media.
And sorry for this, bandwidth issue that somehow I had today.
No
I
problem, Gowree.
hope most of my conversation was audible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, if you can, whoever is comfortable turning on their camera, this will be a quick virtual selfie that we'll do, and then we can put it out on social media as well. Nice, lovely to see so many faces. First of all, such a great turnout. Thank you all once again for joining in today. Niranjan, Aditya, can you help us with the virtual selfie, please? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. This concludes the first edition of EGF Expert Talk Series. We hope you found it valuable. Like I said, you can find us on LinkedIn, both Gowree and the E-Gaming Federation. And we're hoping for more such future sessions going forward, and we will keep you notified. Thank you all. Have a great evening and goodbye from all of us at EGF.
Thank you so much, Gowree. Thanks, Gaurav. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.